The Cisco Nexus 2000 series fabric extenders, or FEX products, are a very unique product for Cisco. As you can see on this web page, they look exactly like a fixed configuration switch. And in some ways, they act like a fixed configuration switch. For instance, they have different port types, different uplink speeds, they have redundant fans, redundant power supplies. But how you configure and manage these devices is much different than how you configure and manage a typical fixed configuration switch. These are called fabric extenders because these switches act like remote line cards for different parent switches in the Cisco Nexus product line. For instance, the fabric extenders are supported on the Cisco Nexus 9000 series, the 7000 series, the 6000 series, and the 5000 series. When you connect a Cisco fabric extender to the parent switch, the Cisco fabric extender takes on the personality of the parent switch. As a matter of fact, on the uplinks, we don't run IP protocols. Those uplinks actually act like backplane traces on a modular switch. And this line card literally looks like extra ports on the parent switch and cannot be managed independently. So that way I can deploy two of these at the top of any of my server racks, connect them back to my Nexus 5000 or 6000 or 7000 or 7700 at the end of my row and manage them from that Nexus 7000 or 6000 or 5000. This way, I greatly reduce the number of management points in my data center architecture. Software is also controlled by the parent switch, because once again, it is viewed exactly like a line card on the parent switch. So the software is actually pushed down from the Nexus 5000 or 6000 or 7000 to the fabric extender, and that way it's very easy to keep these up to date. So once again, a fabric extender acts like extra ports or an extra line card on the existing parent switch. And when I go to manage those interfaces, instead of putting Ethernet 1/1, I'll assign a number to each FEX, for instance 100, and then when I go to manage those interfaces, I will type in Ethernet 100/1/1, and that'll give me port 1/1 on FEX 100. So there are many different types of FEXs in the product line, and each parent switch supports a different number of FEXs, so it's good to become familiar with the parent switch that you have and how many FEXs it supports. So for instance, the Nexus 7700 with a supervisor module 2E supports 64 FEXs, whereas the Nexus 7000 with a supervisor 2 only supports 32 FEXs. Please take some time to look into the different models of switches and the number of FEXs that they support. Also, it's very important to see that there are different configurations for each of the FEXs. Some of the FEXs support 1 gig, some of them support 100 meg and 1 gig, some support 10 gig. Some of the FEXs support Fiber Channel over Ethernet, and some don't. It's also important to note how many uplinks and what speed of uplinks the different FEXs support. So on the Cisco website, under Compare Models, I can very easily see my 1 gig fabric extenders. I can see that I have the 2200 series, which is the newer series of fabric extenders, as well as I can see that I support both 10 gig base T, which is copper connectivity for 10 gigabit servers, and I support 10 gigabit SFP connectivity. This is similar to how I support 1 gig, both in copper and fiber connectivity. It's also very important to note that we only plug in end hosts to fabric extenders. We do not plug in switches, and most of the time we do not plug in switches, routers, or any other type of network appliance into a fabric extender. As a matter of fact, if we plug in a switch and that switch sends a BPDU up to the fabric extender, that port will be immediately disabled. The fabric extenders are only meant to provide connectivity for end hosts. So once again, it's very important to know the different types of Nexus switches. For instance, if I want to know what type of fabric extender supports 1 gig access to all 48 ports, I would know that that is a 2148T. If I want to know which FEX supports FCOE, that would be a 2232PP. All these features are very important to know as I'm designing which switches I'm going to use and what type of connectivity I need for my data center. Finally, there is one other type of FEX that we didn't cover. This type of FEX is called a B22. A B22 is a FEX that goes into a blade chassis to provide features and functionality from Cisco and other manufacturers' blade chassis. So for instance, Cisco offers a B22 for a Dell blade chassis, an IBM blade chassis, an HP blade chassis, and a Fujitsu blade chassis. These B22s offer features like Fiber Channel over Ethernet to those blade chassis, as well as allows a parent switch like a Nexus 5000 to manage those B22s from a single management point. Please join me for the next lesson, Understanding Control and Data Plane Traffic.